Welcome to our TV network, your ultimate destination for all things exciting and essential. From mouth-watering food to the latest in fashion, health, education, music, movies, and news, plus thrilling sports and breathtaking travel, our TV network brings it all to you. Tune in today and experience the best of every world, all in one place, RTV.network.
Hello and welcome to the Connect Caribbean Report here on Kalaloo Alliance Media, our TV network. We're back with another exciting episode lined up just for you. Today we are turning the attention to a regional issue as it relates to the matter of manufacturing, trade, and logistics. Joining us a little later on the program is Althea Wiggins, Barbados' Special Envoy to Suriname and Guyana, and we're talking in the agricultural sector. Connect Caribbean Report is talking Caribbean American single economy, CARICOM, CSME, markets, local businesses, Caribbean people, and current issues. I'm Jennifer Hyland, your co-host for this week's episode, and today we have our co-host, Ambassador Dr. Andre Thomas of Cleon Group, and that's the parent company for Connect Caribbean. We have John Cadenin of the ICE Group. We have Chris Principe, publisher of Financial IT, and Anthony Weeks. He's the founder of the Caribbean American Single Economy, Our TV, and the Kalaloo Alliance Network of the U.S. Virgin Islands. And coming up as well, through Connect Caribbean, we are bridging the islands, uniting communities, and unlocking new possibilities for the entire region. So stay tuned as we dive into the stories and innovations that are shaping the Caribbean's bright future. This is your front row seat to the next wave of regional transformation we are covering here on the Connect Caribbean Report. So we'll be right back with Ambassador Thomas and his guests, Rudy Rampersad, right there in Trinidad and Tobago in Connect New World. And we'll be right back after this message.
Reimagine a world where the Caribbean is seamlessly connected, where our people, our cultures, and our economies move freely across the islands. This is Connect Caribbean. More than a ferry service, it's the heartbeat of a new era, an era where economic opportunities expand, where trade flows freely across our seas, and cultural exchange flourishes. We are linking businesses, empowering communities, and reigniting the hope for a truly integrated Caribbean. Together, we're shaping a brighter, more unified future for the Caribbean. Connect Caribbean, connecting our islands, our people, our future.
Hello and welcome back, and I'm so excited to have with me Rudy Rampersad. And Rudy is one of the principals of Rams Logistics, the leading logistics company in the region and a joint venture partner with Plain Group Connect Caribbean in delivering this maritime logistics supply chain corridor for the Caribbean. So, Rudy, welcome to Connect Caribbean Report. It's our show. Great to have you on. And now I want you to just introduce yourself and let folks know your role in Trinidad in the area of manufacturing and your perspective on what the potential is for Connect Caribbean connecting with the manufacturing sector in Trinidad.
Firstly, thank you very much, Dr. Thomas. Thank you, everyone, Chris, John, for having me here today. Really appreciate this opportunity. And just jumping right into it. In Rams, I'm also director of what we call TTMA, Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association. It's a group of all members of manufacturing come together, where we have this one body that lobbies for the best interests of manufacturers, as we go through that process. So in understanding what we've had so far is that what we've seen is that manufacturers are looking for better opportunities of where we can connect in the Caribbean itself. We've seen a lot of really good products being manufactured in the Caribbean, and that one last part of the supply chain, which is getting it connected to the right islands in the right time at the right price, that was missing in a sense. So with this opportunity here with Connect Caribbean, we can see those gaps now being filled in a realistic way that gives manufacturers an opportunity not just to expand into new markets, but really grow their business. Give them an opportunity to look at how we increase production in the Caribbean and look at how we use locally produced Caribbean products in the Caribbean that gives all of us an economical benefit based on our manufacturing, our quality, and now our logistics and our connectivity into the region.
Okay, thank you so much for such a comprehensive answer. Now, to really break it down so our audience can understand, and so they can really grasp the possibilities of exactly what we're about to deliver for the region. Could you identify for me, say for you, the top 3 products that with a maritime logistics corridor, that these particular products would just explode across the region, that these particular products are really being held back just based on your experience, which I know is very extensive?
So right away off the top, I would start with, we have the basic commodity items, rice and sugar, right? Immediately in terms of rice and sugar, and we use a lot of that in our manufacturing, not just for soft drinks and fruit juices, quite a number of products, extensive products, confectionery also. So rice and sugar off the top, number 1. And then we have a lot of food manufactured products. You got a lot of condiments, ketchup, mustard, mayonnaise, peanut butter, that extensive line of food products. And then we have on what we call the confectionery side, or the snacks, in terms of the different plantain chips, conkers, all of those items. So I think those are probably the start of those 3 items. And then right underneath that, we have a lot of good chemicals. And when I say chemicals, not just household products, but chemicals we use commercially for cleaning, degreasing, that whole style of products. It gives us a real opportunity now to really reduce our import bill external of CARICOM and really allow the manufacturers to push those products here locally in the Caribbean.
Okay, wonderful. Now, I wondered if there are any other of my guests, John. John is a logistics professor from Harvard, and I wondered if you had any questions for Rudy.
I think, Rudy, one of the salient things that we look at is the process of logistics in the Caribbean, and that we really don't have I'll call it a hub and spoke kind of process like FedEx, for example, uses in the United States, and other centers for logistics like they have in Europe. And I would wonder your comments about using a central point in the U.S. as opposed to, let's say, right now, a lot of the products that get shipped and U.S. products have to go through Miami and come from the Caribbean, out of the Caribbean, and back into the Caribbean. Over.
And John, you're spot on, right? You're spot on with that, right? And just to add to that, just right before I get to that, the challenge we've seen a lot of times is that a lot of the U.S. products, be it on the East Coast, coming down into the Gulf, what we look at our central point is South Florida, based on the direct connectivity into the Caribbean and the number, the frequency of carriers and that rotation that comes into the Caribbean. The challenge that we see, though, is that a lot of those carriers come to a main base port, be it Jamaica first and then Port of Spain or Point Nevis in Trinidad. So a lot of times that takes about 7 days to get in. So let's say use Point Nevis, for example, get 7 days into Point Nevis. And then the challenge now becomes, how do they go back up into the smaller islands, to connect those islands? So, and that adds sometimes 7, 12 days. What we've seen that I think that will work very well, which we've seen coming up to fruition on the plans with Connect Caribbean, is similar to that hub and spoke, where we have a base port maybe into Trinidad and Point Nevis to start, and then maybe one further up north, maybe St. Lucia, Antigua, where we create a hub and spoke that we bulk everything into those areas, and then we run a weekly service into the islands, into Barbados, into Grenada, into St. Lucia, and then going further up. That gives us now not just a shorter transit time, but a weekly sailing that gives us now a scheduled service. So guys get a little more confidence into the service, in that now you also don't have to order probably 4 or 5 containers every month or so. You can order 1 or 2 containers every week because this service is going to come in. So it helps us with not just connectivity, but your cash flows and how you manage that type of purchasing also as a result.
So, Ambassador, a follow-up with Rudy is that say something, please, about the interconnecting of the ERP system. So, for example, each country has border police, phytosanitary, weights and measures, and these legacy systems are in different formats and structures, and then a lot of times in our Caribbean, different languages, Spanish, French, and English. So what are the challenges that you face in being able to get that trade facilitation documentation straightened out as you move the cargo?
Yeah. So John, I think the first thing what we've liked or what we've seen work really well in the Caribbean is a lot of us are based or use ASACUDA work. So that allows us one unified system that allows us to upload for a manifest of the vessels, the customs declaration also through the systems. And traditionally, everything is done in English. What we are doing right now and what we're working on the back end is really allowing that connectivity to be able to translate that connectivity in different languages. So you can enter your documentation, you can get that system done in your native language based on your country, but it spits it out based on English as the first language within the Caribbean, and then a second language very easily. So your documentation is processed in that manner. And then through CARICOM itself, based on the different laws in the CARICOM and some of the work that the team has been doing, is that how do we now work through CARICOM to really unify the Caribbean to understand the basic laws of maritime, so that we have one single, we call a single window system that allows all of us to operate on the same system. I know a lot of work has already been started on that. I think Barbados is already, Bahamas is already fully up to date on that system. And then a few of the islands are going to buy it, and it also ties into part of the strategy with MAPOL 55 coming forward. So we are seeing a lot of that work already happening in backend. But the key is that how do we use that one single window to unify that, use that one system to transit through.
Yeah. So, Ambassador, to make sense of this, what Rudy's talking about is ASACUDA, which is a UN system. It's based on UN Recommendation 33, which is a single windows initiative. In the United States, they have the ACE system, the Automatic Customs Environment, which complicates this because as shipments go and have to go through South Florida, they get into the U.S. system, and then they also have to get involved with the agricultural systems that complicate the movement of agriculture. So this system that Rudy's talking about is essential that we get straightened with CARICOM and the Caribbean so that we can interface both with the shipment of the assets, but also with the information necessary to complete the trade.
Thank you so much. Okay, and we have Jennifer Highland here. Jennifer.
Yes. Wow, well, that's so much to discuss and pack into those few minutes. And we're going to touch a little bit more on that in Connected Voices, because we're going to have the experience of an actual small business and challenges. And John is going to chime in on the issues for, transportation and so forth. But that was Connect Caribbean World with Ambassador Thomas. And coming up on Connected the Dots is Anthony Weeks and John Cadenin again, focusing on the U.S. strategy for engagement in the Caribbean and the 4 pillars that are driving the U.S. policy: security, prosperity, diplomacy, and energy. And I'm going to be discussing with Barbados's special envoy to Suriname and Guyana in the Shining the Spotlight segment, and CARICOM's perspective on the pillar of prosperity and the issue of improving the trade and investment climate and supporting businesses and infrastructure development. But we're going to go to a commercial break, and then we come back and we're coming up with Connecting the Dots here on Connect Caribbean Report.
This is a Bloomberg Green Report. The shipping industry's global regulator is expected to approve a greenhouse gas emissions levy sometime next year. At International Maritime Organization's meetings in London, countries have been moving toward new regulations to rein in emissions from an industry that releases into the atmosphere around 1 billion tons of carbon dioxide a year. Potential new IMO rules also include a phased reduction in the GHG intensity of energy used by ships. While the IMO, a United Nations agency, is looking to finalize new rules next year, they will be set to come into force in 2027. Simon Bergolf, shipping giant Moller-Maersk AS's group representative for Europe, believes a previous plan laid out by Japan that would charge around $60 per ton of emissions was reasonable. Currently, shipping carries about 80% of world trade and still runs mainly on fossil fuels. The attacks by Houthi rebels on ships in the Red Sea has added to CO2 emissions due to vessels now having to go longer distances to deliver their goods. Dan Schwartzman, Bloomberg Radio.
Let me mention the Caribbean, which is, if you will, a sea very close to our heart here in the United States. It is, of course, just to the south of us. The United States has the largest coastline on the Caribbean. We have many close friends and partners all along that body of water, including Central America. I think the ambassador of Guatemala is here. We have Colombia, Panama, Venezuela is a challenge today. We don't know how that's going to turn out. The potential there for more tension in that Caribbean region is quite high as a result. Narcotics continue to flow across it, but so does a rising level of trade and engagement. For the United States, I think we've had a long history of kind of ignoring this world to the south, frankly. Before I was famously the NATO commander, I spent 3 years in Miami, where I was born, my first 4-star job, and I was the commander of Southern Command, which is all military activity south of the United States. So I spent a great deal of time traveling in this region. And I came to really despise an expression that you hear occasionally in the United States. People would say to me, gosh, Admiral, you have a really important job focusing on Latin America and the Caribbean because, you know, that's America's backyard down there. Think about that expression for a moment. It's rude, it's inaccurate. Are we Canada's backyard somehow? It's geographically distorted, and it ignores the enormous potential of this region of the world and our growing cultural, linguistic, economic connection with it. So I look at the Caribbean as a zone of partnership in the Americas. I'm often struck by the way the United States has kind of appropriated that phrase. I'm an American, you know, and the song, I'm proud to be an American. Well, yeah, okay. Think about it for a minute. The Americas go from Canada to Tierra del Fuego down in Chile. A Chilean is an American. A Canadian is an American. We're all of the Americas. Now, we're probably too far down the path of the term to kind of reverse course. But the more we can think of the Americas as a zone of partnership, the more we will prosper in this century. Enormous upside, highly maritime, from the Panama Canal to the Caribbean Sea to the coast of South America.
Can't hear you, Anthony.
It would be good if my mic was unmuted. Gentlemen, how are you doing today? So welcome, my friends. This segment is called Connecting the Dot, where we focus on the initiative called the Caribbean America's Single Economy. The reason this is important is because it's a macroeconomic development initiative that literally, when we say connect the dots, you have CARICOM and its Caribbean Single Market Economy. We have the U.S. strategic strategy engagement in the Caribbean, and we are part of the United States. And then obviously, for the U.S. Virgin Islands to have a seat at the table, we needed to be able to have a platform in which gives us a voice. And so the U.S. Virgin Islands Caribbean American Single Economy provides us with that opportunity. And so this segment really will, if you will, take the blueprint, which is the law that was passed in 2016 by Congress, to improve and enhance relationship between ourselves and our Caribbean region, is where we believe how we will then effectively bridge the gap to create the kind of efficacy for better trade, commerce, transportation, investments, technology, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm joined by my colleague, we have Ambassador Thomas, we have John Clendenin and Chris Prinsby. Gentlemen, how are you doing today?
Good.
Great. So you just saw the video, that clip that talked about really just kind of redefining, if you will, what does it really truly mean to be the third border of the United States? What does it really mean to be a neighbor between the United States and the rest of the Caribbean? What's your take on that? Anyone? Let's go with John.
Okay. My view, Anthony, is that we are joining the rest of the world in these kinds of coalitions. So in Asia, there's ASEAN, we have the European Union, we have different kinds of cooperation efforts that happen. And as the general was saying in the clip, you know, the Americas particularly it's the third border for the United States, but it's all through Central and Latin America. It's through South America in the northern part of South America, and then all of our Caribbean nations. And so we are joined by a common, I guess, history of exploration or exploitation from Europe, where we're made up of multi-cultures that are tied to the European counterparts. So if we could take advantage of that, and instead of having the allegiance going back to the colonial kinds of issues, or what are the English-speaking Caribbean or what are the French-speaking Caribbean, and look at how do we join together as one Caribbean enterprise for economic development and unity, then we'll talk about not only the customs and the movement of goods, but also the movement of people, and how do we actually share and have things like a visa, like the Schengen visa and the CARICOM kinds of visas that everybody can enjoy and can travel for education and prosperity.
When we look at, and I want to be able to bring in our colleagues, Chris Principe and Ambassador Thomas, but the pillars of this U.S. strategy engagement in the Caribbean focuses on these areas: security, diplomacy, prosperity, energy, and education, and health. Those are the pillars in terms of where and how the U.S. sees a coordinated effort to be able to improve and enhance relationship between our two countries and the region. Chris, what's your take on what your understanding and what you've seen in terms of the clip, in terms of how best to be able to position ourselves strategically as a territory, as an extension of the United States, but working in tandem with our partnership with CARICOM and in concert with the U.S. multilateral relationships in the region?
Well, Anthony, the first thing that comes to my mind is that there needs to be some bringing together of all the different countries that make up the Caribbean and even Central America and some of north of South America, and CARICOM was the initial way that was done. It's a pretty old agreement now, and I think one of the steps that we have to look at is how do we update that so it's compatible with what goes on in the world, particularly between the U.S. and other countries. The other challenge, I think, that comes back to some of the things that John said with logistics and documentation and paperwork, and I would stick another layer on that, which would be the financial side, because you have a number of different currencies down there, and in many cases, people are making payments and receiving payments by going through even three currencies. So from their home currency to the US dollar or to the euro, to the pound, and then to the currency of the partner that they're trading with, and so forth back. So some of these things have to be simplified and have to be reduced so that we can be more efficient.
Thank you. And Ambassador, real quickly, 60 seconds. What's your take on this?
We actually have an opportunity to significantly make a difference in this. I believe that the ingredients are there, and with our partnership in creating a Connect Caribbean hub in the U.S. Virgin Islands, we can actually tangibly create something that becomes a token of the possibilities of what can happen. So I believe that we can act as a catalyst in speeding up the process of this. And so those are my thoughts. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We're going to take a quick break. Coming up next, we have Jennifer Hyland and her featured guest this afternoon, Special Envoy Wiggins from the Barbados government. And we're looking forward to that conversation. We'll continue here on Connect Caribbean Report. We'll be right back.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. There's a real demand for backup power in areas hard hit by Hurricane Helene and now Milton. So it's no surprise Generac Holdings, that makes generators, is seeing its fortunes rise. Its stock was up 8.5% Monday. Beef price fixing, that's the accusation by McDonald's against meat suppliers, including Tyson Foods, JBS, and Cargill, saying they coordinated to fix, raise, stabilize, or maintain the price of beef at inflated levels. McDonald's has filed suit. No response yet from the companies. FTX customers who lost digital assets when the cryptocurrency exchange imploded nearly 2 years ago are being made whole. A bankruptcy judge has approved a repayment plan that could net shareholders in the fraud-tainted exchange a slice of $1 billion in seized assets. Some FTX customers, though, have criticized the plan because the payments will be made in cash instead of crypto. I'm Nancy Lyons, Bloomberg Radio.
How do nations rise to greatness, even in adversity? Leading nations into economic dignity reveals the leadership mindset behind national success. This isn't about formulas, it's about leadership. Discover the philosophy that can transform any nation, large or small, through strategic, creative, and reflective thinking. Written in an accessible wisdom style, this book expands mental paradigms, evoking new possibilities for national development to shape a prosperous future. Get your copy today, available on Amazon, and sculpt a future of national greatness.
We're back with Welcome back to Connect Caribbean Report, where we are in the spotlight and we talk about regional, international issues with our guests, relevant topics. We just want to get some insight on their perspective and their contribution in bringing the Caribbean together. Welcome to the program, Ambassador Wiggins. It's great to have you here on Connect Caribbean Report.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Thank you for the invitation.
You're so welcome. Well, let's jump right into it. So we were just watching that segment there with Anthony Weeks and team, John and Dr. Thomas and Chris. And I wanted to get your perspective after watching that video and hearing the discussion. I specifically want to look at the pillar as it relates to prosperity and the U.S. policy with regards to this particular pillar. And they're talking about improving the trade and investment climate, supporting businesses and infrastructure development, open skies, sustainable tourism. But you're the special envoy for the Barbados government to Suriname and Guyana with specific interest in the agricultural component. So I want to get your perspective looking at the U.S. policy and that particular pillar and prosperity and that bit of information that I just shared with you. My question to you, my first question to you would be like, how does CARICOM plan to enhance agricultural trade with the U.S.? Saying that we have the 25 by 25 reduction in our food importing bill. What is the perspective of CARICOM and ensuring, for example, compliance with safety regulation and standards? What support is needed from the U.S. partners to expand the sector here in the Caribbean?
Thank you for the question, Jennifer. What CARICOM countries need to do will be to strengthen their sanitary and phytosanitary regulations in order to be able to export to the United States. Even when you are importing or exporting within the CARICOM region, there are protocols that have to be adhered to. So what Caribbean countries need to do would be to deal with the U.S. authorities, the USDA, to have oversight over the products they want to export. So take an example, if you want to export, just call it a name, pineapples from the Caribbean into the USA, you have to find out what the protocols are and the regulations that are laid down in the United States in order to export to their country. Their protocols may be different from what you have in your country, but as I always say, each country is sovereign and you have to adhere to rules and regulations as laid down by those countries. What would then happen is that you would have to do what I call site visits to each territory, and I want to address that more when we're discussing that issue that you brought up with the lady who's doing ice cream. People have to understand that as sovereign countries, you have to obey rules of other countries. You just can't wake up tomorrow and decide that you want to export to the United States and then complain about their barriers to trade. Did you investigate those barriers before you started on your business to determine what you want to export to that country? Because, like I said, the rules and regulations could be different, and you really have to familiarize yourself with the countries, the culture, everything that adheres to it. So it's not just a wake up and do something and then complain. You have to know what those regulations are.
Absolutely, Ambassador Wiggins. So it really leads me to this question then. How do you see the U.S. then further supporting the growth and formalization of these businesses in the Caribbean to make sure that they're ready and they understand the regulations that you just put forward? I mean, in terms of small and medium-sized enterprises, you're driving economic prosperity, but as you said, they need to understand these particular dynamics, compliance issues, and regulations. So how do you see the U.S. working with CARICOM to support the formalization of these businesses in the Caribbean to make them export ready?
You would first have to address the gaps, because life is not perfect. So as I stated before, if you want to export to any country in the world, and in this case, the country is the United States, you have to look at the gaps, see where the deficiencies are, and address those gaps with the different products and that you want to export as well as services. Uh, John before spoke about the different currencies as well that exist within the region. That could also be an issue. The issue of banking, that could also be a gap. The gaps are not always sanitary and phytosanitary. The gaps could also be economic and financial. And in the Caribbean, in terms of trade, most persons convert to the US dollar and they trade in US dollars in order to be able to do trade with America and sometimes even with your own CARICOM nations. Because sometimes you get the arguments within country, but I'm doing business with another CARICOM country and they're asking for US dollars. They ask for US dollars simply because it is a good Barbados dollar is tied definitely to the US dollar and has been for a very long time. And it's a currency, a good currency to be able to trade with. So when we say again to identify the gaps, there are many different areas that we have to look at. And as I said, financial, economic, as well as sanitary and phytosanitary issues. And after you have addressed those gaps, then you can determine your path forward.
Great. Thank you so much for that comprehensive answer, Ambassador Wiggins. But I want to, just before we go to a break, if you can quickly give me your 360 view. I mean, the CARICOM has this 25 by 25 reduction in import. And I'm looking at the mutual benefit between the US and the Caribbean. Obviously, the Caribbean doesn't have deep pockets as the US, as you can well imagine. And the governments have set this 25% reduction in the food import bill. So what opportunities do you see for mutual benefit between the US and the Caribbean, seeing that the Caribbean significantly has challenges with their food import?
Well, one of the mutual benefits clearly would be to use the USVI as a transshipment port in terms of the goods could be imported from the US, but they go to USVI, and then they're then shipped from the USVI to the Caribbean countries via Connect Carry, via the ferries. So once we have that ferry in motion, I think that trade between America and the Caribbean that will be bridged by countries like the USVI will make it a lot easier, both importing as well as exporting. And I think it will build a bigger and a better relationship within CARICOM. That's how I see it.
Absolutely.
And having a seat at the table as an observer or an associate member of CARICOM would give you a lot more leverage. It also gives the USVI a lot more insight as to what happens in CARICOM and within the various territories, and see how they too are able to see the gaps and help us to be able to fill those necessary blanks that we have to fill in.
Excellent. Excellent. 100% agree with you. And we are all looking forward to the implementation of Connect Caribbean Ferry Service to address these burgeoning issues. But that was Barbados Special Envoy to Suriname and Guyana, Ambassador Althea Wiggins. And we're going to be talking more and digging a little bit deeper in the Connected Voices. We're an actual small business and speak about her challenges. And we'll have everybody's contribution as to how we can mitigate those issues for the SMEs across the Caribbean. So we'll be right back after this message with Connect Caribbean Report.
With the Bloomberg Small Business Report, I'm Nancy Lyons. Small business owners are holding their collective breath ahead of the presidential election. The National Federation of Independent Business Optimism Index edged up slightly in September after declining in August by the most in more than 2 years. The group's uncertainty index rose to a record high as small business owners await the outcome of the November election. 3 of the 10 components that make up the optimism index fell, while 5 increased and 2 held steady. The share of firms planning capital expenditures slid by 5 points to 19%. That's the lowest reading since April of 2023. Some 34% of firms reported job openings that they couldn't fill. That's the smallest share since the start of 2021. The top concern for small business owners continues to be inflation, with 23% saying that was their most important problem. That's a 1-point improvement from August. That's the Bloomberg Small Business Report.
Reimagine a world where the Caribbean is seamlessly connected, where our people, our cultures, and our economies move freely across the islands. This is Connect Caribbean, more than a ferry service. It's the heartbeat of a new era, an era where economic opportunities expand, where trade flows freely across our seas, and cultural exchange flourishes. We are linking businesses, empowering communities, and reigniting the hope for a truly integrated Caribbean. Together, we're shaping a brighter, more unified future for the Caribbean. Connect Caribbean, connecting our islands, our people, our future.
Are you a political leader or aspire to be one? The Political Visionary is the ultimate guide for you. Unlock leadership wisdom that goes beyond politics. Cultivate a culturally intelligent model of governance, tailored to the needs of your town, city, or nation. This book equips you to create a safe and prosperous society with insights from history that ignite innovation. Motivational, principle-centered, and future-focused. The Political Visionary, authored by Ambassador Dr. Andre Thomas, is your blueprint for transformative leadership. Get your copy today, available on Amazon, and begin to lead with change.
This is the Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini. Watch for the housing market to continue to pick up over the fall and holiday season in Southern California and across the country, and then really blossom next spring thanks to lower mortgage rates.
I think that we will have a considerably hotter housing market by early next year.
Daryl Fairweather, Chief Economist at Redfin.
Things will start to warm up this fall and winter, but I think the housing market will pop come springtime. Some early birds are looking now. Most of them are probably going to start in the new year. And then as competition heats up, people will even more urgency to buy a home before prices go up more.
And Fairweather also says inventory will also pick up in the spring, but it will still be a seller's market in many metros.
I think there'll be more buyers than sellers still, but people will be excited to see more new listings come in the market every week.
And that's the Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini.
Well, welcome back to Connect Caribbean Report. And we're in the segment Connected Voices. And this segment focuses on the perspective of Caribbean people, businesses, in relation to the topics and the focus of the program. So I'm glad to have my colleagues back with me because we're going to be focusing on a story of a small business, and they're going to speak. After I'm going to read this case study, and then we're going to have a discussion and bring everything together and wrap the program up in the remaining minutes. So I have this individual. She is an SME. She's a producer of strawberry products, and she's based in the Bahamas. And she attempted to relocate to Barbados to serve the Eastern Caribbean market. But there's some difficulties in getting access to the fruit and that she uses in her sorbets, as well as the logistics of entering the Eastern Caribbean distribution network. And she considered relocating her company to Barbados. And here's what she said. She said, I was unable to arrange shipping. All shipments would have to go through Florida customs and therefore meet USA FDA standards before being shipped back to South to the Caribbean. For the same reason, I was also unable to produce fruit from the Eastern Caribbean to use in my production in Nassau, Bahamas. Instead, I have to import fruit from Florida. My product requires frozen shipping. I was able to receive a dry box from Jamaica via one of the logistics companies, and the cost was very high for the shipper to send it to me. And then I also incurred a high expense in retrieving the package from the logistics company. We only did that once, shipment, as it was not economically feasible. I explored relocating my strawberry manufacturing to Barbados with the goal of moving closer to the raw materials, fruits such as mangoes, soursop, tangerine, etc. I was also hopeful that I can use the daily ferries that travel between the Eastern Caribbean islands. However, as they do not offer frozen storage, I would have had to arrange for the installation of my own portable freezers on their boats. This was an expensive option that I could not afford. And what for her outcome? We have lost opportunities to sell our product to St. Lucia, Turks and Caicos, and a few other Eastern Caribbean islands that expressed interest in carrying our product. Her story, my colleagues, she's not alone in this situation. This really is a burgeoning issue across the Caribbean. Based on all of the things that we just discussed in this segment, I wonder if you can chime in here and offer some solutions and that businesses such as this lady in her sorbet manufacturing company, what would you say to her if she was sitting right in front of you?
If I can go first on that point, Jennifer, market research is really very important when you're looking to import and export. And for one, Barbados does not grow a lot of fruit here. So pineapples, we import a lot of pineapples from Guyana and Suriname for that specific purpose. There are people who grow some of them. So we do grow fruit here, but not in abundance for manufacturing purposes. So that's why I said that market research is very, very important when you're pursuing a business for export. So it would have been better for her to maybe ask somebody a question first. And as I said, get a lot of that fruit from Jamaica. You go to Jamaica, you see the mangoes, I mean, literally wasting away on the ground. We don't have those amount of mangoes in Barbados. You go to Guyana and Suriname, and the markets are flooded with food. So first of all, in order to get her raw materials, she should identify the correct CARICOM country that she wants to get the raw materials from and to be able to get them on a consistent supply. So I'll
Yeah.
start there and then let other people take.
Yes, yes. But she also talked about the shipping logistics and the cost and having to use Florida and coming back to the Caribbean, which really it incurs additional costs and then makes the end product very costly. So I want to get John's perspective from this lady's experience.
Yeah. I think one of the things to, right off the top is to understand that this woman's experience is a common experience rather than a unique situation. And when we look at the essence of supply chains, it's the movement of the goods and materials for build operations such as in food security. It's the movement of the information and it's the movement of the money. And I defer to Chris on the actual movement of the money, but it's really how do you think about TT dollars, Barbados dollars, American dollars, what's happening with euros, what's happening with now cryptocurrencies. So it's very well understood how do you make these transfers, whether it's the archaic KTT transfers to the SWIFT transfers and MT99. You know, there's technical formats of how the money moves. But in the logistics, having the hub here in the U.S. Virgin Islands, for example, we're exempt from the Jones Act. And so foreign flagships can land here and then also in the United States. And when we look at the Caribbean region as how we interface with each other, the use of regulatory reforms that we can use, such as free trade zones, where they're not actually getting into the countries where they have to comply with the rules and regulations of a third-party sovereign nation. So I think that together we can make a difference, because by coming together, the private sector with CARICOM, as opposed to just the governments working together, there's long-term constraints about how the governments do and observer status and different things. But from the private sector perspective, we can put together a solution for these common problems.
Great, John. Wonderful. But I want to bring in Ambassador Thomas here because she also talked about using daily ferry travel, but there was no frozen storage. She would have had to arrange installation. Tell us about Connect Caribbean. Is that going to be an issue for Connect Caribbean cold storage? What's the plan for Connect Caribbean? And then I want to speak to Chris about the financial aspect of it.
Okay, very good question, Jennifer. We would actually have a solution to that, because the boats that we are purchasing come with the capacity to move frozen goods. That's a key feature of the goods, of the boats. And so the logistics challenges that the lady who we are featuring had and has will basically be solved by the Connect Caribbean service. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ambassador Thomas. So, Chris, principally, a lot of the challenges as well that small businesses are having in terms of the payment gateway and so forth. We use the EC dollar, we use the US dollar, and so forth. And so that may be also be an issue as well. Not maybe, it is an issue for businesses here in the Caribbean, whether large businesses, micro businesses, SMEs. What is shaken up? What does it look like for small businesses and their payment solutions that can also address the issue of payment and effective payment for small businesses within the Caribbean, looking at movement of goods across the region? I can't hear you. Can turn your mic. Thanks.
Okay, certainly it's a challenge, and it's always been a challenge. I just want to mention for a second a little of my personal experience. In the late 1980s, I actually imported pineapple from Guyana through Georgetown up to New York, and it was an exotic fruit there for the supermarkets, well received. but the challenges of cold storage was one of the big issues. Getting regular flights was another one. So I can really feel for how SMEs are challenged and really almost prevented from doing the business the way they should. Now, when it comes to the payment side, we've traditionally had a lot of problems with both the exchanges of currency, as I mentioned before, having to use third-party currencies like the dollar for stability, and we've had also the challenges of the banks pulling out of the region. So there's fewer and fewer options, and this is all a matter of what we call de-risking that's gone on. Now, some of the bright spots, though, is that electronic payments have really stepped in to try to fill some of this need. There's a number of payment companies out of the Caribbean, one out of Barbados in particular, that has done a very good job in trying to connect the different countries and payment systems. And I think ultimately there'll be some benefit from crypto in being able to make these payments, where people will be able to use Bitcoin, for instance, to pay from supplier to vendor and have it done immediately and have it done with at the right cost without a lot of extra expenses. Because the thing that everyone forgets too is when you change from currency to currency to currency, there's expenses and charges and fees every time.
Yes. Yeah.
Jennifer, I also want to chime in here to say that within the region, less than container loads, because most people ship 20-foot and 40-foot containers. And if the person wants to order raw materials and then, of course, ship the finished product, if they don't have a full container load, it becomes really expensive for them to have just a pallet essentially put on a container, unless you have consolidation with other small and medium-sized enterprises where you can more or less have a container with many small businesses who want to ship. So sometimes we have to work together to circumvent this problem of shipping. And as I said, you're looking at consistency of supply. And books are not something that you can order a whole container load and hope that it's going to last you for the next 5-10 weeks.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Ambassador Jennifer, what Ambassador Wiggins has brought up is just the complexity of agricultural supply chains. And by having a hub and consolidating the LTL shipments is going to help. But also, the ambassador talked about cold storage. But it's actually complicated because it's not just frozen goods, but it's goods that have to be kept cool. And it's like bananas have to be kept in special atmospheres with nitrogen to protect the ripening at a certain point. It's the supply chain of component parts of the movement of sugar and then making jellies and jams and different kinds of products, and just not the raw food. So the production, what happens with tariffs, what happens with the government regulations of those, the insects that we don't want to go in jurisdictions. It's very complicated, but it's not complex. We just need to put together those procedures, which I think is the wonderful aspect of what we're discussing in this program.
Wonderful. Well, I mean, we've only got 1 hour, so many interesting points and valid points raised, and certainly with Connect Caribbean, our stakeholder engagement meetings that we're going to be holding across the Caribbean, we'll be able to have a good opportunity to fully ventilate some of the issues that were raised here that we can't cover in all of the Connect Caribbean report. Certainly the IT, financial IT, and fintech, and so forth. You can find that all in the Connect Caribbean on our YouTube, in our stakeholder engagement consultancy. We actually had a whole segment that spoke to financial fintech as well. And certainly we look forward to fully ventilating these challenges, because Connect Caribbean report, Connect Caribbean Ferry, we are all about the solutions, and that's the reason for this program, so that you know that there are solutions, and we are working assiduously on solutions to address these burgeoning problems that have been happening across the Caribbean within the region for many years. But we are out of time, but we're going to break for commercial break, and we're going to come right back and just get a quick wrap up from all of our guests and colleagues, and we'll see you next week on Connect Caribbean report. But we're going to break for a few messages and come back with our closing comments.
Reimagine a world where the Caribbean is seamlessly connected, where our people, our cultures, and our economies move freely across the islands. This is Connect Caribbean, more than a ferry service. It's the heartbeat of a new era, an era where economic opportunities expand, where trade flows freely across our seas, and cultural exchange flourishes. We are linking businesses, empowering communities, and reigniting the hope for a truly integrated Caribbean. Together, we're shaping a brighter, more unified future for the Caribbean. Connect Caribbean, connecting our islands, our people, our future.
Well, we want to thank John Clendenin of the IC Group. We want to thank Chris Principe of Financial IT, Ambassador Dr. Andre Thomas, and our featured guest this evening, Ambassador Wiggins, Special Envoy for Barbados to Suriname and Guyana. And we certainly want to thank each of them for being here. And you can learn more about Connect Caribbean. Just visit www.connectcaribbean.com for more information of our plans and how we are looking to make sure that we are ready for the solutions across the Caribbean. But I think that's it. It's the time. We're out of time. But I want to thank you for staying with us and over the hour of this program. But we'll see you right back here next week, same time, 1:30 AST, to talk about Connect Caribbean Report and Connect Caribbean World. So thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.